is up, everyone? Apparently not my camera. Hold on. Forgot to turn that on. Okay, that should be on now. There we go. Probably helps the camera's on when I start a stream. Just a little bit. What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Got briefed on Monday to expect increased activity and to brace for impact from this conflict. We haven't seen shit. LOL, I work in healthcare, cyber. So here's the thing. I understand there's going to be increased activity from all of this stuff. But there's kind of this unspoken rule when it comes to healthcare. You don't F with healthcare. You don't F with kids. Like, you know what I mean? You don't F with the sick, you don't F with the kids. Those are kind of like the two things where it's like, don't do this. Like, I've seen cases where people have, like, tried to, like, go after, like, preschools in the past, you know, like, that had bad, security around camera systems, and then you had a bunch of hackers that went after the hackers that tried to, like, go after... It was a funny situation. I forget the specifics about that one, but yeah. Well, here's the thing. Most of the attacks that happen on hospitals are actually automated. Most of the attacks that happen on most networks are automated. That's the reality. The majority of attacks happen to be there. I wish someone would say that to the Chinese. Their state actors are on us all the time. APT for the most part, or RAS. It's hard to say for sure, like, if it's always, like, Chinese state actors, or if it happens to be actors either in China or using Chinese IPs. APTs are a whole different thing. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some stuff, and Donald Trump is definitely a schmuck. I just want to, like... Okay, we're going to get on the very, very rare tangent that I go into a political rant that doesn't happen to be related to digital rights and privacy rights and all of that. Where the hell are all the Make America Great Again people? Because I fail to see how us going into Iran and bombing the shit out of them is making America great again. And how Donald Trump is suddenly, you know, still the most peaceful president ever. Like, look, I will still say, you know, like, you look, and anyone's like, oh, yeah, you know, he's a Democrat. Look, I've been here before, and I said Obama's gone into wars that he shouldn't have gone in before. And I've ragged on every president that's, you know, happened before. I have no sacred cows in this frickin' argument. All politicians suck in different ways. But Donald Trump is a whole new level of suckitude, okay? I don't know what else to say. No matter what way you look at it, you know, like, Donald Trump had no business to get involved in this. He can't keep his damn story straight on this whole thing. Well, you know, we were going to go after Iran because they were, you know, going to go after us. Pentagon says, you know, that's not really apparently what was the story. And then they're saying, well, we were going to go in, you know, because Israel's going to go anyway. And Israel's like, well, we were working with America on this. So it's like, Netanyahu's a schmuck. I've said that before. A lot of Israelis think he's a schmuck, too. Most of my family in Israel think he's a schmuck, okay? I've been on record for this, so it's not like you can say, oh, Chief is just saying this. You can go back as long as you want in my content and see I've been saying that. I'm just saying, like, don't get me wrong. Do the Iranian people have the short end of the stick in terms of a lot of, you know, civil rights and liberties? Yes. Is it our job to get involved in that? No. We are not the damn police force. This is basically turned into the real life version of Team America. You know, that puppet movie, you know, that one? That's basically what we've turned into. And now it comes out that basically we've, you know, been, if this is true, that we've basically been bombing somebody we were in diplomatic talks with. This is going to F America in the long term, because no country's really going to take us seriously, because they're going to think, hey, they're talking diplomatically with us. Are they moving to strike? I hate politics. It's a big dick measuring contest that we don't need to have. Yeah, Trey Parker and Matt Stone definitely are goated. I'll definitely say that. Chief, take a chill pill right now, people. I wanted to relax this trip. When have I ever chilled? Your AI is sending stand of the world. Oh God, what did my AI say? What did my AI say? Oh God, I gotta see this. Because my AI takes some liberties with some of this stuff. Okay, let's hold on. Oh, God! Oh. Uh-oh, things are getting intense. Is the world ending? Server migration madness continues. Plus some expensive cybersecurity. Is the world ending? Let's dive into it. Oh. My AI definitely took some liberties with that one. Oh, that is funny. Oh. You know what? I'm not gonna hate the AI for that because, melodramatic, yes, but I'm kind of liking the AI clickbait lately. I don't know. I've just been kind of on a clickbaity, you know, kind of tangent lately. I don't know if you saw my latest YouTube video. How did I clickbait everybody? Hey, I found the greatest, I finally found the greatest Linux distribution ever. Tells everyone there is no greatest Linux distribution. Are they building a new Tor or Summit? I don't know about Tor. Listen, not the worst clickbait I've seen. I know. Oh. What the hell happened to my audio there? That was weird. It went all sketchy and derpy. But yeah, this world has definitely been interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how a lot of us in cybersecurity, have your success on YouTube relies on your social engineering abilities. Prove me wrong. You're not wrong! You are not wrong! The other half is your content. I'd say it's 90% ability to clickbait people, 10% content. But it's going to be interesting because the next few months are really going to determine, are going to help a lot of people in their cybersecurity careers, and if anything, maybe opening up a lot of positions in cybersecurity for a lot of different companies because, like it or not, if you're an American-based business, it's open season. It's open season in many ways for political hacktivism. If you're just tangentially related somehow. This is why I tell people also, like, look, I know there's a lot of people that want to be apolitical. Look, even I say I hate politics, but I have to be aware of it because my job relies on it every day. I have to be aware of what North Korea is doing, what Iran's doing, what all the various state actors are doing, because that will also reflect what I have to do day to day in my job in cybersecurity. That's just how it is. So the reality is, if you're the type of person that doesn't want to understand politics and is like, oh, you know, I don't want to know what goes on in the world because if I turn on the news, it makes me sad, get the fuck out of cybersecurity. I know that sounds mean, but that's the honest truth, because a lot of our news is basically revolving around business shut down because of cybersecurity. Business had data compromised. Thousands of people had their data leaked. Children's information was leaked. Business had a bunch of CSAM found on their servers. That is the reality of what we have to deal with. Do we like that exists in this world? Not really. But the reality is, if that stuff didn't exist in this world, and we didn't have evil exist in this world, cybersecurity wouldn't exist as a business. Kind of effed, isn't it? When you think about that. If everybody actually was a good person in the world, we wouldn't need cybersecurity. Was on an IAN's call the other day. IAN's? What's that stand for? Yeah, welcome to the new world, dude. It's not the new world. It's more along the lines of same old world with new shit sprinkled on top of it. So this thing called DAPA or DARPA. Well, DARPA's been a thing for years. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning, it was always turning it. I'm also in the middle of migrating my logging server, so I'm still transferring a crap ton of data. I have it mostly active, so I got the 12 Docker containers built on the server. Grafana, the syslog, a bunch of, other stuff in there. I'm just having Claude go through and fix some open search indexes that didn't transfer properly, but yeah. Ayatollah is no longer in Iran. Okay, so you know what's effed? Is, from what I'm understanding, they did elect, there's a new leader coming in that apparently is the son of the Ayatollah. And apparently that son, from my understanding, not only lost his father, but his mother and his wife from these attacks. So, congratulations! We just radicalized the next leader. And you know what the worst part is? You have all these leaders talking about, oh yeah, we're just gonna keep bombing them into submission. As if we didn't do that in Vietnam. Yeah. That turned out great! It's not like we didn't bomb them with conventional weaponry like they talked about before to Kingdom Come. You had a bunch of people with inferior weaponry and dug themselves into holes with AK-47s, managed to push back an allied front. The problem is you have people that have never actually seen what terrorism looks like in front of them, never experienced it in front of them and seen how it actually can radicalize people for better or worse. I've seen bombs go off in person. I've seen buses get blown up. Let me tell you, the worst thing about a bus bombing, it smells like a barbecue. It's the most disgusting thing. I didn't mean to leave y'all with that morbid thought, but I just want you to tell you, I've seen shit. Hey, but that's what therapy's for. Thought this stream was about Linux. Well, it's about my ADHD rants about whatever happens to go, which happens to be about Linux and cybersecurity. And right now we're kind of on a cybersecurity rant, and we're talking about how the Iranian conflict actually will translate into more cyber attacks that happen around the world, and the geopolitical situation fallout from that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Do people forget that I'm a cybersecurity professional that happens to use Linux? Chief 100% started the fire. Seen a bus blow up too, but it was on destroy, build, destroy. IAN says Institute for Applied Network Security. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what a bunch of the ISACs and everything say about increasing attacks over time. I'll be curious to see what critical infrastructure has to say. I'll be curious to see what the advice and what the outlook looks like towards power companies, gas companies, both in natural gas, liquid petroleum, and gasoline, things like that. You know, all those kind of soft targets. Because here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize the Achilles heel that is the United States electrical grid. That's not me trying to scare people. CISA says it's not an issue. We are at peace. Yeah, well, you know, they're also trying to tell us before 9/11, things were just honky-dory. I was alive. I think you were too, Stabby. Maybe. It was always burning, the world's been turning. Look, if we don't laugh, we cry. Why do millennials always have a morbid sense of humor? I don't know. Why do we keep having once-in-a-lifetime events in our entire life every 3 or 4 years? Why is everything unprecedented? Yeah, why is everything unprecedented? Because before our 40s, we've witnessed the most catastrophic events. Not just the most catastrophic events, the most catastrophic events every 3 to 4 years. So, like, what? We had 9/11, and then only, like, okay, maybe a few more years after that, we had the Great Recession, effing us right into the economy. Cool. We start getting good footing. Yeah. And then what happens? World pandemic. Now, potential World War III. With a whole Archduke Franz Ferdinand situation to boot. And if you don't know that reference, congratulations, the education system has failed you. And now people want to wear masks, I said it. Yeah, that's the funniest thing. Years ago, people were hassling me for wanting to wear masks, which, mind you, I've worked at IT in the healthcare setting for longer than the world pandemic has existed, so the common courtesy was you got the sniffles, you got a cough, you'd put a mask on just so you didn't contaminate anything and you didn't spread your germs. Kept doing that common convention, people, started, questioning it and politicizing a damn health concern, and suddenly now, we gotta protect the identity of, these officers who are restricting the rights of people. Oh, now you're okay with the mask. Could be worse. At least you don't live in Ohio. Hey! What's up, Hans? How's it going, buddy? But yeah, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Those offers are almost wearing burqas at this point. Yeah. They're basically wearing balaclavas at this point, covering their whole faces up. Look, I'm not completely opposed to police officers covering up their masks in, let's say you are going after a meth house. Okay? Or a proper SWAT raid. But if you're just conducting a regular operation as Border Patrol, nah. You're a regular cop. Wear your damn badge. Gotta only protect those agents, but everyone else, F your data. Oh, yeah. And you saw how they're, ICE is trying to do 24/7 monitoring on social media and everything, and then build databases and everything. It's like funny. Here we are, repeating the entire Edward Snowden crap all over again. What's old is new again, and what's new has been done time and time again. My God, it's like you may as well just take vinyl and just take the needle and bring it right back to the outer edge and just drop that record over again. You don't want World War III? Well, guess what? Too damn bad! You get Iraq War version 3.0. Except this time, you don't get a vice president that shoots his best friend while quail hunting. You get a guy that fucks a couch. Your thoughts on tourists have to prove 5 years of their online presence to the US government? Yeah, it's fucked. Land of the free? My fucking ass. Hey, are you a criminal? Have you done anything to F anyone else's rights? No. Come on, right the fuck in. You got the First Amendment. Oh, you don't like our president? That's cool. Neither do I. It's your damn right as an American and anyone in this country to say whatever the fuck you want, so long as you're not restricting the rights of others. That wasn't the first time that a VP shot someone. Yeah, but you know what? It was the first time that a VP was gangster enough that his friend apologized to him for getting shot in the face for his friend shooting him. Look it up. And I want everyone to know, I don't care who the next president is, Democrat, Republican, pink with purple polka dots. They're probably gonna get some hate from me too. You can clip that. You can take it to the bank. Because you know what? Around these parts, we embrace equal opportunity haterism. Vermin supreme for president, indeed. I believe in Ponytopia and a pony-based identification system and dental re-education facilities and green energy that is zombie-powered. We're gonna dangle brains in front of them as they turn giant hamster wheels for energy. And we're gonna include a harmless yet addictive substance inside of toothpaste to coerce you to brush your teeth more. If you don't know this reference, this is all from Vermin Supreme, who was an actual candidate for president, believe it or not. He's one of my all-time favorite presidential candidates. He's the guy that wears a boot on his head. Yeah, he's a friendly fascist. He's a politician that you can trust. And he openly has told you that a vote for him is a vote wasted. And it's because he will promise you everything and absolutely deliver on nothing. His own words. Okay, but anyway. I still got to edit a couple more videos, like that video about Linux verification, but I have to, like, add a little bit of an editor note in there. All right. So, we have a little bit of a thing that I didn't catch up on earlier last month. Dutch authorities seized one of Windscribe VPN servers. The VPN provider said no user data will be compromised. And this is a lesson for all of you that are like, oh, you'll just use a VPN and everything will be private. No. No, it will not. You have to inherently be able to trust your VPN server. And the problem is, if law enforcement's going to compromise it, then, well, yeah. Windscribe confirmed that no user data should be compromised thanks to its RAM-only servers. Windscribe uses RAM disk servers, so the only thing the authorities will find is a stock Ubuntu install, wrote the company on X. However, a senior security researcher at Citizen Lab, John Scott Railton, points out that RAM-only servers are not a bulletproof solution. And this is the one thing I will definitely agree with, is that there's a flaw in everything that you do, short of using tin cans and string and talking offline. I know nothing more about this case, but keep in mind that hot plugs that let authorities seize a server without cutting power are commonplace. Scott Railton wrote in a tweet. He argued commodity VPNs aren't the right tools for people in need of strong privacy protections. So, like it or not, if you're in need of strong privacy protections, Tor is still a little bit better of a solution. Now, some people will say, well, Tor can get backdoored. Look, every solution can get backdoored. Your mom can get backdoored, giggity. But, you know, like, you do need a strictly no-log policy for a VPN, and that, yeah. But even then, you have to be able to trust that your VPN provider actually isn't keeping logs. And so far, the only one to really have proved that claim has been, I think, Proton and Mulvad in court. Wouldn't that string be the line? Yes, Jessica. Yes. F off. So yeah, that happened. On another note, Google Quantum proves HTTPS by squeezing 15 kilobytes of data into 700 byte space. Wait, what? That math ain't mathin'! How do you squeeze 15 kilobytes into a 700 byte space? Wait. Yeah. Anyway. I guess compression. Look. Even I, as a fat man, can only suck so much to fit into jeans, okay? That's a good example of how compression can only go so far. Alright, Google on Friday unveiled its plan for its Chrome browser to secure HTTPS certificates against quantum computer attacks without breaking the internet. The objective is a tall order. The quantum-resistant cryptographic data needed to transparently publish TLS certificates is roughly 40 times bigger than the classical cryptographic material used today. A typical X509 certificate chain used today comprises of 6 elliptical curve signatures and 2 EC public keys, each of them only 64 bytes. This material can be cracked through the quantum-enabled Shor's algorithm. The full chain is roughly 4 kilobytes. All this data must be transmitted when a browser connects to a site. The bigger you make the certificate, the slower the handshake and the more people you leave behind. said Boss Westerbaum, principal research engineer at Cloudflare, which is partnering with Google on the transition. Our problem is we don't want to leave people behind in the transition. Yeah, this is going to be interesting because you're going to basically have to leave behind a lot of retro computers. You know, like, we're basically going to have to leave behind at a certain point all the retro computers that have some sort of networking. It's just an inevitability. To bypass the bottleneck, companies are turning to Merkle trees, a data structure that uses cryptographic hashes and other math to verify the contents of large amounts of information, using a small fraction of material used in more traditional verification processes in public key infrastructure. Cloudflare is a much deeper dive into Merkle trees. Merkle tree certificates replace the heavy, serialized chain of signatures found in traditional PKI, public key infrastructure, with compact Merkle tree proofs. Members of Google's Chrome Secure Web and Networking team wrote Friday, in this model, a certification authority, CA, signs a single tree head representing potentially millions of certificates, and the certificate sent to the browser is merely a lightweight proof of inclusion in that tree. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out, but we're also going to have to rely on other browsers being able to adopt the system, but also you're going to have to see certification authorities adopt this standard and it be propagated. It's still going to take several years, even if we do get this to be able to be deployed properly, because right now companies buy certificates in like 1 to 3 year bundles on average. So those certificates exist for those 1 to 3 years. Well, they're going to be provisioned as is, and they won't re-provision with these enhancements until they go to renew their certificates. Your thoughts on California trying to force and others? Yeah, I already have talked about this on the last stream, and I have an entire video going on. I think it's pretty easy to say it's dumb. Okay, what's this? Alright, so Vampire shared this little short. Red Dead Redemption 2 melted this laptop. Oh wait, hold on. I forgot to do the reset the Wi-Fi thing. Or reset the audio. And then, okay, so we got that. And then
front left.
Okay, cool. That should. Now let me, if I refresh. Yep, the NVIDIA audio issue. But is there anything we can do about it? Only if you're in California, contact your congressperson and tell them that they're a fucking moron! It's a California thing. And then, that's it. There's nothing you can really do. This is why I tell everyone, like, you need to stop being, you know, like, oh no, there's nothing I can really do. I'm not gonna get involved in politics. I go out and I call my congressperson about a bunch of different random bills that get affected at the federal level and the state level. If my congressperson can do something about whatever's going on, I reach out to them and I voice an opinion. So that's what you can do. Speak up, stand up, and use your rights. But otherwise, not much you can do. What do you prefer, the 5070 Ti or the 9070? Whatever one floats your boat. I personally use the 5070 Ti because I need to use CUDA for some of my work. I have 5070 Ti. But either one should be fine. You might avoid politics saying it doesn't affect you, but politics will find you. Kara, the better way to say it is that you might not fuck with politics, but politics will fuck with you. Look, I'm not some political commentator. I'm not one of those circle jerky, political commentators that's going to go around like, debate me, and have the delusion that going around debating random internet people is somehow going to change people's minds when really you're just going to seek people that happen to, agree with your perception of the world as it is to that, caters to your echo chamber. That's how most people, unfortunately, are. They don't actually go and seek out diverse points of view. But I'll tell you what what the world's actually like. What DE do I use? Right now, this is GNOME on Pop OS. Pop OS 2204. I'll eventually move to Pop OS 2604 when it gets out. Alright, so what are they doing? Thoughts on Johnny Silverhand? What is that, the, Cyberpunk thing? I need to play Cyberpunk.
A guy's laptop literally caught fire playing a video game, and honestly, I'm not even surprised.
You could say that game was fire.
He was running Red Dead Redemption 2 with everything cranked to ultra on a laptop. Resolutions were maxed, shadows, textures, the whole deal maxed out. And his laptop said absolutely not. This thing started billowing thick gray smoke out of the vents. I'm not talking a little wisp, by the way. This is like campfire smoke. He had to take it outside and set it on wet concrete like it was a hazard, because it was. When he cracked it open to see the damage, an entire section near the
Yep, that's the battery. This is also why I tell people, like, look, gaming laptops are fine and dandy, but gaming laptops are not really the best kind of thing, but also, something tells me he didn't have the best ventilation. Also, something tells me that wasn't exactly... Why do you have a SATA SSD? In a gaming laptop cranking Red Dead Redemption that high. Why do you have one stick of RAM? I don't know. But anyway, I mean, the laptop should not. You'll need to replace batteries more often on a gaming laptop. Well, yeah. Well, batteries just generally, they don't last, but...
battery and motherboard had completely melted. I'm talking just gone. And the best comment on the post, I see you let Arthur smoke. This is why we build desktops.
Yep. Look, I have a laptop that has an NVIDIA 4070 in there. But I don't let it, like, roast. It maybe goes, like... Actually, it's on the AMD APU most of the time. I once in a while flip it over to NVIDIA for it to do NVIDIA-y things. It's just there. Actually, nowadays I don't need... It's a Dell. It's a Dell. And honestly, depending on the age of that laptop, should be under warranty, but somehow something tells me it's not. Well, hold on. I may be wrong. It may not be a Dell. No, it's a Dell. Dude, should have got a Dell.
Damn.
Something tells me that he modified that laptop. But also, it's just kind of weird that there's only one stick. I don't know. It's not the greatest thing that happened, but... I have a beast one, but it stays in ventilated surfaces. Yeah, if you get a gaming laptop and you're going to be gaming on it, you need to get one of those cooling pads and actually, like, dust the cooling pad. Like, get a compressor and blow the air out. Like, I have a proper compressor that can do up to 150 PSI. Not that you should do 150 PSI with it, but it can, and I blow my machine out once in a while. Give it a nice blow job. My desktop is Adele, and that's its username. It's Adele. Did you actually set the desktop, though, to Adele? Did you modify the background, the boot up sound to one of Adele's songs? All right. Sorry, I was checking something on the script. Anyway, moving on. What do we got here? Is this a dog video? Your siding is a solar panel.
It goes on the outside of your house, or in this instance, a commercial application. But yeah, when you pull back, you can see it just looks like regular exterior siding. But then look at this. It also has the ability to turn into an LED screen. So you can see this being used on commercial applications, but I don't know, man, the future's looking bright. This is a...
I feel like he just showed that so that you don't... Well, could you imagine somebody hacking that to put adult content on? Why the hell was there a dog in the background? I don't know. Okay, so what's this video then? Yeah.
This startup just worked out how to weave robotic parts rather than bolting them together, and it means that they can cut production times from weeks to just minutes. Most advanced robotics are assembled from hundreds of tiny parts, a bottleneck that makes robots slow to build, expensive to customize, and hard to scale. However, a Hungarian-US robotics startup company called Olonic is threading a different path. Their 3D tissue braiding method lets them make lightweight structural cores, effectively the robot's bones, and automate a braiding method to weave multiple materials with different properties together around this core, in a single continuous process. Rather than connecting sections of bone together with mechanical hinges, the team uses high-strength structural fibers to provide load-bearing joint stiffness. The team also creates built-in tendons using high-tensile cables directly integrated into the structure during fabrication. These tendons can be contracted by motors located deeper in the structure. By adjusting the braid angle and using elastic fibers, they can control the degrees of freedom and angle that the joint can move through, recreating how human tissue supports and limits motion in our own joints. They can also include things like pressure sensors or conductive elements to allow sensing and signal transmission through the part of the body itself. As a result, they produce a single integrated structure, strong where it needs to be and flexible where it should be, with no assembly or tiny screws required. This is important because if robots can
The hell was that?
leave the factory floor anytime soon and work along us, we need bodies that are cheap, adaptable, and easy to make, not hand-built relics of an industrial era. If you like science and just realize that AI is now literally pulling the strings, follow for more. This startup just...
Huh, interesting. Is it likely for the iOS lockdown to be backdoored? Anything could potentially be backdoored, but as of right now, no.
This clear coating turns windows into solar panels. It could change everything. Researchers in China developed a treatment that turns any regular window into invisible solar panels,
Shut up and take my money!
converting sunlight into electricity without sacrificing aesthetics or space. Not just a little electricity, a lot. Like terawatts of clean energy that could eventually meet 40% of the US's energy demand, reducing annual carbon emissions by billions of tons. It's made with
Oil companies right now trying to track down that person the same way as the one person that turned the water engine, so they could have him mysteriously unalived.
The coating of this liquid crystal substance that can bounce certain colors of the sunlight to the edges of the window. At the edges, there are these tiny solar cells that catch the bounce light and turn it into electricity. It does this while still letting 64% of visible light through and maintaining 91% color accuracy.
Wait,
Now,
what?
researchers are looking into optimizing the technology and manufacturing so that innovation can be installed across the globe, turning cities into vertical solar farms that could lead to energy self-sufficiency. This could change everything.
Terawatts?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? This is serious.
no,
This is
it's
serious.
serious. Yeah,
This is serious.
Sweet. Give it to me now!
Columbia Engineering developed a self-contained, soft artificial muscle that is 3 times stronger than human tissue. This 3D printable material expands and contracts on its own, enabling soft robots to move and lift like biological muscles.
We could make prosthetic arms. We could have that iRobot arm that's stronger, and then we could fight the robots. There is hope to fight Skynet!
Columbia Engineering developed
Welcome to the inner workings of my brain.
Chinese researchers developed a non-toxic, low-cost metal polymer conductor, combining liquid metals and elastic polymers, enabling stretchable, durable, biocompatible flexible electronics for wearable and implantable devices.
Furry's gonna use that technology so they have light-up fursuits built into their body. You know it's gonna happen. The cyber goth's gonna be out there getting synthetic mods. Although, you know, it'd be nice. Get that built in your hand, and then you always have a nightlight. Alright, let's see. Didn't we see this video with Uruguay? I thought we saw... Oh, no, we saw the much longer video.
My name is Ramon Mendez. I'm Uruguayan in South America. 15 years ago, the economy was growing very rapidly. And at that time, there were not a single wind or solar farm in the country. So
I saw a company that made tiny solar panels for TV remotes that are so sensitive that they can create energy from your table lamp. Oh yeah, there's been stuff like that for years. I mean, you can get, what was it, like the TI-30 calculators, the scientific calculators, you could actually, like, they were solar powered and they could actually be powered from the fluorescent lights in the classroom. Saw that a few years ago, just a lot of people's rooms are dark environment charge them. Yeah. Put hacker gear in my body that I can upgrade.
we were relying only on existing hydropower plants and
TI-84.
on imported fossil fuels. We were importing more and more fossil fuels to cope with our increasing demand, and it was also more and more expensive. So we're really living the perfect storm. But of course, this crisis can be taken as an opportunity. This is exactly what we did. What we had to solve at that time is it possible to have a large system with a large amount of wind and solar? And the second question, can we do it decreasing costs instead of increasing costs? People was terribly skeptical. People thought that it was not possible, that it was not perhaps a good solution.
It's only not a good solution to fossil fuel companies. Because the reality is, like, everyone talks about, like, it's not possible right now because of fossil fuels and costs. But the reality is, one way or another, we have to get to that point. Because fossil fuels are a finite resource. They will eventually run out, or at least run out to a point where they're no longer reasonably accessible to be consumed. And then you're talking about, like, they're already talking about, like, in, like, 50 to 100 years, they're going to have to do, like, coal to oil, where they basically convert coal into oil production, which is something that was actually, I think, done in World War II Germany during the whole, like, cutoff of oil productions and stuff like that. But anyway, eventually we do need to move to that. And the only reason electric production is so expensive is because the infrastructure as it exists right now. But if we shifted more of us to having a renewable grid with decentralized delivery, it would actually be more economical, but that would require an upfront investment that a lot of people are just like, they don't want to do it. But it's one of those things that if you invest now, it actually pays off dividends in the future. And I'm not one of those people that's like, fossil fuels bad, just for the inherent sake of like, yeah, it is bad in terms of like, yes, it is introducing more greenhouse gases and things like that. But I'm not one of those crazy, environmentalist people. I'm looking at it from the practical sense of eventually we do have to move away from it. And we do have to evolve into a more sustainable technology. But one of the reasons why there's such propaganda against this is that if we move into a renewable system where people can actually do a lot more self-generation of energy and communities can start generating energy, that means that you now no longer can centralize a lot of wealth into the hands of a few large megacorporations that then generate a lot of the oil and coal that then power a lot of the current infrastructure as it exists. That's just the unfortunate reality of the world as it is that we're driven by the greed of today, that we're stealing from the future of tomorrow to pay for today's greed. But if we would actually take a little bit of a sacrifice for today, we would actually be more beneficial in the long term and be more prosperous and more wealthy in the long term. Does that mean, like, look, we're already at a point right now where you have people that have already such vast amounts of wealth, they're not going to be able to spend it in their entire lifetime. But then you have people right now that are in vast amounts of debt that they're not going to be able to pay it off in their entire lifetimes.
The interesting point right now is that renewables is not just the solution for the global climate issue, because nowadays renewables are cheapest.
The Linux when you need to provide your account. Yes, Eric. I've said this I think for like about a week now. It's fact. California is doing stupid things. Colorado is pushing for it too. There's nothing you can do except for, if you're in California or Colorado, call your politician a freaking moron for endorsing this. Yeah.
They're the cheapest option.
I'm going to have an entire YouTube video going into this. It should be up by this weekend. I already recorded it. I just have to sit down and edit it, but I just started my new job this week, so I haven't had time. So yeah, but I'm officially a senior cybersecurity engineer, and I'm liking my new job.
We have to take out all the hidden subsidies which are backing fossil fuels, because if you just put renewables on the same footing and fossil fuels, renewables are going to win. Sure.
That's exactly what I say. If you put renewables and fossil fuels in the same footing, renewables will win every time.
All the economy money in order to subsidize the electricity sector, and we're doing exactly the opposite. We're not subsidizing, but we're taking money from the energy sector in order to subsidize the rest of the economy. And this was crucial because it's a strong impact on the whole economy. Second point is the stability. Not only you decrease costs, but you stabilize costs as they become independent on geopolitical events like wars. In Uruguay, we had no consequences of the tragic war in Ukraine because our electric system is almost independent on the cost of natural gas or coal, on oil.
Yeah, like let's look at the price of oil right now. With the war in Iran, this stupid war. Price of oil per barrel. Now, this doesn't affect the price necessarily in the gas tank right now, because there's always, yep. Look at that! Look at that! We went from January 7th, $54 a barrel, to, it was $57 a barrel February 26th to, it's now $76 a barrel a week later. So it's gone up. Hold up. Let's see, what's the math for that? All right, so we're talking 76.394 divided by... No, it went up to from 63.20, but then it went down. No, wait, hold up. Oh, wait. My bad. It was 65. That's still not great. Oh, look at that. It's still going up. Like, look at that. You can literally see the number kind of like just petering up, tickering up a little bit. That's fun. So it went from 63,964. Yeah. That's great. But yeah, if we had renewable energy, then we would actually be able to stabilize a lot of that cost, because what would happen in Iran wouldn't affect us as much, because most of the Midwest, for example, their electricity is powered by coal and gas. But your electric bill is going to be going up as a result of this. Your natural gas bill probably going to be going up as a result of this, so your heating bill. I remember when crude futures were in the negative. Yeah. Ukraine in the building. We still have electricity only because we still have 3 nuclear power plants. If they weren't there, we'd have complete blackout, and even then I often have no light. I live inside the country in war for 4 years. If we didn't have 3 power plants, there would be total blackout, and still, I don't have electricity sometimes. Pretty much. Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of nuclear energy as well, as you know. The USA is just one of those dumb countries that doesn't recycle nuclear fuel like France does. Yeah, get that. The French do something right.
Costs are fixed. You do not depend on any fuel that you have to buy, because the fuel is free. We are much more sovereign because we are just dependent on our own resources. This is one point. The second point is that we created 50,000 new jobs. This is something like...
Yes, they do a good job protesting, I will say that. Seeing farmers dump manure in front of politicians' houses, or, you know, at least the political buildings will never not be funny. Seeing French firemen spray policemen with fire hoses will never not be funny.
3% of the total labor force of the country. It has a tremendous positive impact on the whole economy.
I remember back when all of Texas was covered in snow and ERCOT, it melted down and they blamed renewables. Yeah, and it wasn't renewables. It was the fact that they deregulated the power grid, which then allowed the power companies to actually not weatherproof the actual weather grid enough. So what happened was they were not prepared for the cold snaps, because they're like, oh, yeah, we don't need this winterproofing and all that. It never gets this cold in winter. Lo and behold, it actually did get that cold in a winter finally for Texas. And then Texas had variable energy pricing for a lot of people by default. A lot of people don't know this, but that happens. So they then spiked a lot of people's prices, so people had like thousands of dollars in like electric bills and all that. Yeah. It was not renewable energy that caused the spike in prices. It was the stupidity and greed of electric companies not preparing the grid properly for inclement weather.
And last but not least, we have almost decarbonized our mix. Our emissions are 30 times smaller than the world average. There are still people that they think that climate change is
Yep, yeah, my friends got effed over by that. Barely used any electricity, like their reptiles enclosures cracked because of the cold. Double effed. Yeah, it was really bad for a lot of people. That's also why I tell people, many states allow for this. One of the advantages of at least being deregulated is, you can shop around for your energy suppliers, and you can actually pick for renewable energy. And where I'm at, actually, my city collectively bargains as an energy supplier to buy energy in a yearly deal that they renew every year, and can generally get it around 1 cent per kilowatt cheaper than the market sells it. And that is at a fixed price. So it's like 9 cents per kilowatt hour plus transmission from AEP. And then, so you don't have to deal with that. Now, you can go to your Public Utilities Commission website. They usually have comparison tools like apples to apples, things like that, to help you shop your gas and electric supplier costs. Yeah, pick your power broker. Parents used wind power back in the early aughts. My mom actually worked for an oil company. Yeah, you can totally do that. The city that I live in, they actually use a combination that tends to lean heavily towards renewables.
just an invention. And the worst of all is that we have governments, we have presidents that say that climate change is just an invention. Even if you think that, renewables are the best option just for your national economy.
Yeah.
Because if you decrease costs, if you stabilize costs, and if you create jobs, what else can you need? Even if you are a fossil fuel producer country, because this is cheaper, and you create much more jobs than fossil fuels. So if you put all of this together, I mean, the benefits of going renewables is really fantastic.
Yeah, like straight up, my next house, I honestly want to see about getting solar panels and everything on there to make it a little bit more sustainable, and that would actually make it a much easier justification to get an electric car. Because right now you get an electric car, you're still just using coal and gas power for a lot of the stuff. But if I could do that, then you could have a completely, responsible car that I'd drive around town. Yeah, it'd be great. Alright, let's see, what's next? A wall-mounted solar panels, £0 bills, 120 pounds a year profit. Okay. Get also wind turbines. Wind turbines are a little bit more of an expense, and you also need land for them.
When most people think about solar panels, they probably think about putting them on a roof. But what about walls that are doing nothing other than absorbing a load of sunshine? Why not put solar panels there as well? Well, that's precisely what David, our homeowner that we're visiting today, thought. And he has put a load of solar panels outside his home, and now
I'd do that.
0 energy bills. Welcome to Everything Electric. Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean energy tech are funded by our fun-packed Test Drive-tastic events in the North, West and Greater London, and our events down under. Next up, Everything Electric North 2026. Plus, check out everythingelectric.store for merch and much more. Back to the episode. David, our homeowner, moved into this property in June 2019. A typical late 1990s build with original double glazing, minimal loft insulation, and completely dependent on gas heating. Since then, he has installed 4 kilowatts of solar PV on the roof, a Tesla Powerwall 2 storage battery with a total of 13.5 kilowatt hours of capacity, an extra 20 centimeters of loft insulation, expanded polystyrene bonded bead cavity wall insulation, a second 4 kilowatt solar PV array on the wall, and a Tesla backup gateway.
I don't know if I go with the Tesla Powerwalls. I may actually try to build my own Powerwall, but the batteries are like so expensive. Powerwalls are not difficult. It's just time consuming to build.
And a Dakin 6 kilowatt heat pump. Sadly, his Mixergy water tank wasn't compatible with the setup and was replaced with a standard hot tank. So tell us about the wall solar, because this is quite unusual and not something we've seen on the show before. How did it come about?
So we moved into this house in 2019. There was no solar anywhere. First thing we did was to put solar on the roof, which worked really well because it's south-facing. And then for 3 or 4 years, I was looking at that south-facing wall. It's just brick. There's nothing else on it. It was getting baked.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
You know, every day when it was sunny. And I just,
especially if you have no windows, that'd be perfect.
thought, surely there's energy and money that can be made by collecting the solar that's landing on that. So after a bit of research, I went ahead and found a company that was willing to undertake the challenge. It was quite difficult. Most companies wouldn't even touch it because it's so unusual. But we had a company fit it, and it's just been fantastic. It does vary how much it generates during the year. So in the winter months when the sun is lower, we actually get 50% of the total generation off the wall. In the summer, when the sun is higher, it drops down to about 35%.
As in
interesting
coming from the wall and then the remaining coming from the roof.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. One thing that strikes me is that it may have been a little bit divisive with your neighbours. What was that planning process, and maybe more interestingly, the reaction from your...
The reaction is from me that I would put the solar panels in the design of a giant middle finger.
neighbours.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the planning side of it first. Because I knew it would look very obvious, I did contact our local planning department to see what they would say. I described what it would look like. I gave an idea of how big it would be on the wall, and they said absolutely fine. It would be considered permitted development so long as it didn't protrude more than 200 millimetres off the wall, which it wouldn't. So on that basis, I went ahead. I didn't need planning, and I installed it. And then about 2 weeks after it had been finished, I got a letter from the council saying, from the same planning department, saying, you've had wall panels put on your wall, you need planning permission for that. So then began the process of getting retrospective planning permission, which took...
This is why I do not understand the UK. Like, I watched Jeremy Clarkson and his shit that he has to go through with government, and I'm thankful there's the US way that things get done. It's a little bit effed in other ways, don't get me wrong, but at least you don't have to deal with this bullshit. It's like, no, this is the answer. Cool. Can I have that in writing? Great. Have a great day.
A couple of months. During that time, the council weren't against it at all, but as part of planning, you get feedback from your neighbours, or they get sent letters so they can leave comments. And they weren't particularly positive or supportive about it because of the looks, but ultimately it was the council's decision to approve it. And
why the fuck can your neighbors tell you what the hell you want to do with your house if it's not actually something that's bothering you? Oh, we get solar panels on our house because we're, wanting to use less electricity from the grid. Yeah.
They have a climate emergency strategy, and so they wanted to do everything they can to support local residents that are trying to do their bit. Since that planning process, we've had no negative comments at all, and if anything, just inquisitive comments. And wow, I've never seen that before. How well does it work? The answer being really well.
When the wall solar was installed, you also got a Tesla backup gateway. I guess 2 questions. 1, what is that precisely? And 2, why did you need it?
So with the Powerwall battery on its own, if there's a power cut, ironically, you can't run the house off the battery, which you'd think, well, that's one of the reasons to get a battery. But it's because the battery has the ability to put energy back into the grid as well as draw from it. And by default, without this backup gateway, if it detects a power cut, it just turns itself off. And it's so that when the engineers are repairing the local grid, they don't have batteries pumping energy back into the grid. So that was one reason to get the backup gateway. So now, in the event of a power cut, it immediately cuts the house off from the grid, so we can then continue running the house off the Powerwall itself. There were 2 other reasons to get it at the same time as solar. One is that solar installations at the
Guess that's a
time
good reason to have
you
it.
only had to pay 5% VAT. If we just install the gateway on its own, you'd have had to have paid 20%. So any installation that includes solar, you then only pay 5% VAT on the total installation. And then the final reason, which is where the inner geek in me comes out, is there's a home automation platform called Home Assistant, which gives you incredible control, and it centralizes the functions of many different apps. And using Home Assistant and the backup gateway allows me to control the power wall to a much finer degree than I would have been able to through the Tesla proprietary app.
You've also got a heat pump here. Where did that sit in the order of the various bits and bobs you installed?
So the heat pump was the last thing that we put in. We only put it in almost a year ago to the day. And it's something I'd been considering for quite a while because we were on a gas boiler. We'd already upgraded our hot water tank to not use the gas boiler for heating, so that was in a purely electric only tank. But it was running with an immersion element, which is only 100% efficient. So
I have a heat pump in my upstairs. They work freaking fantastic. Don't run it for the heat upstairs because, well, the heat for the central and the rest of the house, you don't need it. It's actually so freaking toasty, I have to crack the windows upstairs. But a heat pump is fantastic for winter. Just gets the AC, and the electric bill is maybe like $30 more a month. It's cheaper than running a dedicated like window AC unit.
Quite an expensive way of heating water. The things that initially put me off heat pumps were the cost and the fact that our house is built
not
with
really
microbore.
My computers actually are relatively efficient, and
diameter, 8mm.
These computers are off actually quite a bit of the time. Like when I go to work, most of the time these computers are off. The only things that are on is the rack, and most of those are on low power CPUs and everything. And right now it's like closer to like 200 watts for the entire rack, access points, power over Ethernet, everything.
In a diameter, and I was told by some companies that was too small and that we'd need to have the whole house repiped. It turns out that we didn't, and I can confirm that it works absolutely perfectly. The reason it was also done last is I was just looking around for different quotes, and then...
Oh right, British homes actually have old-fashioned water, heaters, like the boilers in the house, so you can actually have a relatively efficient system. Okay, we don't have that here.
And Octopus started installing heat pumps a couple of years ago, and we got a very good quote from them, cheaper than most. And I think in hindsight it's because they were quite new in their journey of installing heat pumps, and so they were actually potentially doing loss leader installs just to get pumps installed. So we got a very good price. It took a very long time to get it installed, partly because of planning issues, which I could go into, but also they were just so busy with inquiries. We were waiting months for the engineers to come and do the initial visit. But yeah, we've had it a year. And
wait, you had to get like planning and shit like that for a heat pump? Like, man, I called like, hey, I want to get a heat pump installed in my house. Cool. Where do you want it installed? Cool. We can be out next week. Excellent.
And absolutely love it.
So no upgrades to radiators or pipework in order to get the heat pump?
Radiators, yes. Pipework, no. So they did replace all the radiators in the property because originally the house was designed to run on a gas boiler with a flow temperature of 55, 60 or something. So the radiators were all quite thin. The radiators they replaced them with has allowed us to run a much lower flow temperature.
Oh, nice.
Sort of mild weather, it's down to mid 30 degrees. If it's really cold, sort of below freezing, it might go up to 40, 45.
See, I'd love to have a house at least piped that way. I actually really like the water, heater systems when I lived in Germany. They seem to be really efficient compared to a lot of the central heat systems we have in the US, especially if I don't have to use as much space in the house.
Your heat pump, I think, is at the front of your property, which is, I'm guessing, where some of those planning headaches came from.
Yes, so that was actually where the planning department were happy for it to go in the end. We did initially want it down the side of the property, kind of out of line of sight, out of the way, and we went through the planning process, which involved getting architectural drawings of the whole property, which is quite expensive. We waited 3 months for their opinion, and they said, sorry, that's amenity land, so it's in this development, it's an area that has to be kept green, and they don't want some industrial looking block sitting there. So we then put planning in again to have it at the front of the property, which was logistically or mechanically the only other real place that it could go where it wouldn't get in the way of things. Another 3 months later, another set of architectural drawings, and they said, yeah, that's fine. We could have had it potentially in the garden, and I think that would have simplified the planning and it would have gone straight through. But you need to leave an area around the pump for airflow, because if you cram things around it, that can affect the efficiency. Our garden is already quite crammed, as you might be able to see. There's not much space available, so I wanted it outside in the front. The second reason I wanted it outside is as a talking point.
Yeah, like, it blows my mind the amount of planning permits you need. Like, I didn't need a bunch of this shit. I just had to get an electrician, do that shit, have them run it and do it, and that was it. It was done. Yeah, I don't think I had to, like, deal with any permits and shit.
Yeah.
Because until people see this type of technology, like the wall panels, they'll just think, oh, no, I don't see anyone with those, there must be something wrong with them, or they do the main mistake of just reading the newspaper articles about heat pumps and think, oh, no, there's too many problems. So it has been a talking point, and I'm very happy to tell people that it works fantastically.
So how much precisely did David's retrofit cost? Well, David spent £1,080 on a heat pump as he qualified for the boiler upgrade scheme grant of £7,500. He spent £15,200 on the roof solar, batteries and a Tesla gateway. £5,600.
So there's one nice thing, they actually give you grants to do the upgrade, whereas we don't
meaning
have that.
A
We have to
grand
do it all
total
paid
of
for ourselves.
£24,090. No question, a big investment. But what does this mean
roughly
in terms
30
of
Gs.
payback period?
When we actually installed it, I'll just caveat that with saying we didn't install it originally for the payback. We wanted to try and do our bit for the environment. We were in a position to be able to afford the technology. We knew it would pay itself back. That wasn't the real driver behind it. That said, there is a payback period, and if we take that 24,000 figure and compare it to what a property of this size would typically cost in utility bills, which I can only base on some internet research, and the figures I found are around £1,800 that it would typically cost to heat and light and run a property of this size for 2 to 3 occupants. So if you take £1,800 a year, 24,000 investment, it's about 13 years payback period on the basis that we now do not pay utility bills. We're actually being, based on my data, we're being paid £120 a year to run the house, which is nuts. I should mention that we have 2 electric cars as well, which we charge overnight during the off-peak hours, and if you take that into account, it costs us about £275 a year to run the house and charge 2 EVs, and we've done about 22,000 miles in the year. It's just a no-brainer.
See, that's why I would love to do
You could offer
solar and
some
everything.
real
It pays
small tidbits of advice to
for
people
itself.
who are about to begin this process. What would you say?
Why
I
is Tuck
suppose the
bearing
overriding
arms?
thing would need to be your
Because
budget.
I think a penguin would like to have bare arms too. I mean, that's what, the rights are about. For you to have bare arms hang over your, furnace.
How much are you willing to spend on this? How long are you going to stay in the home to see that return on investment? We're hoping to stay here for a long time. If we weren't, if it was like our first house, we might not have put that much investment in because we wouldn't have got it back. So I would say, start with the budget, do some research on the various types of technology that are available, and of course watch Everything Electric Tech and look for unbiased reviews of the technology, and particularly, YouTube is full of it, reviews from homeowners that have had this stuff for years and give you real feedback on how well it's worked. And I suppose my other advice is don't just rely on looking at the media, because there's so little positive coverage of this technology. It's only when things go wrong or someone has a bad experience that it ends up in the media. So don't let that put you off.
Well, yeah, because media doesn't
whilst
like to
we've been
put
sat
good
here,
things in the
we've been sat
news.
next to a model of your home, and you've already alluded to the fact that you really enjoy understanding the home automation side of this as well. Tell us, what is this? What's going on?
So this is essentially an executive desk toy that I will have in my home office upstairs. And for those familiar with the Tesla Powerwall app, or actually any app that controls or monitors solar and battery usage, there's usually a little picture of a house that shows energy coming and going. And I thought that would be quite fun if I had a physical model of that so I could see, and monitor the data. So yes, this takes the data from Home Assistant and displays it on a number of little LED displays, and there are buttons that allow you to cycle through what each display is showing.
I just know that there's going to be so many people in the comments who will put in a request for you to make them a model of their home with all of this information displayed. This is very cool. You're speaking to the right crowd. There is no question that this is a very impressive, if not a little bit unusual, install. But it has also taken some serious graft and some serious investment as well. But when you look at the fact that not only do they have zero bills, but are being paid £120 per year, if you're going to be in a property for many years, it totally makes sense. But that is all that we have time for today. As ever, please do let us know what you think in the comments. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.
See, I wish the U.S. actually would give you grants and stuff to do stuff like that. It actually would make a lot more adoption a lot easier. I don't think I could do it in this house because it's going to be, I don't plan to be in this house for enough time for it to make sense. But the next house, I definitely want to get a roof that I can put a better antenna on and solar panels and a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah.
So a while back,
So this is the smartest way Europe is expanding wind power. This is from the Upshift.
made a video about the Rants tidal barrage in France. Finished in the 1960s, it's been producing electricity ever since, and is expected to keep running well into a century of production, all while still using its original turbines.
Wait,
But
what?
since the 1960s, a lot has changed, as the world has scrambled to grow renewable energy capacity. Particularly wind and solar have seen massive investment, driven by their abundance and the rapidly reducing costs of these technologies. But you'd struggle to find a wind turbine that lasts 60 years, let alone 30. And this presents a growing concern. As many early pioneers of wind energy face aging wind farms, they're not only under pressure to increase their share of renewables, but also now to maintain what's already been built. But what if we could do both at the same time? Repowering is a term that refers to the upgrading of existing wind farms by fitting turbines with better parts, or in fact by completely replacing them with newer, more efficient ones, while often making use of the original infrastructure and grid connections. And this is being done as we speak. In December last year, the Muel wind farm in Aragon, Spain was repowered, over doubling its energy output whilst reducing the number of turbines from 27 to just 3. In this,
You know, that would actually make a lot of sense. And it actually decreases the overall investment required, because then you don't have to build the initial setup, you just have to do the upgrades around it. Yeah, makes sense. What did they say about 27 to 3? Modern from 27 to 3.
but whilst reducing the number of turbines from 27 to just 3. In this
Wait,
video,
what?
we'll look at why repowering makes sense, how and when we should repower, and even how turbines could be designed with repowering in mind from the outset. I'm Luke, and you're watching The Upshift. So the first question is, why do we want to repower in the first place? Especially when in some cases it means retiring turbines before they've truly reached the end of their functional life. Beyond replacing aging infrastructure, there are 3 main reasons why repowering is favoured over building completely new sites. And the first is that often there's simply no choice. In densely populated regions like Europe, there's actually a significant shortage in suitable sites for new developments. Combine the need for a strong wind resource with the restrictions around residential areas, farmland and nature protection, and there's suddenly a very small pool to pick from. As to be expected as well, the best wind turbine sites are generally developed first. And so repowering these prime locations with larger, more efficient turbines allows developers to fully exploit their potential, rather than deploying new projects on less optimal sites. Another big incentive for repowering though isn't just about the resource being better, but it's also about the wind resource being known. You see, when you're looking at building a wind farm, the whole economics of the project are going to depend on the wind resource available. And because the wind is inherently variable and unpredictable, the best way of estimating that resource is by looking at historical data, something developers don't have for most greenfield
and if you have an area that you
characterizing the wind resource typically requires obtaining data at the site of interest over 1 to 3 years, and then correlating this to nearby sites with historic data, a method known as Measure, Correlate, Predict, or MCP. In repowering projects, this uncertainty is largely eliminated. Turbines may have been operating on the site for 1 or 2 decades, providing long-term data at the exact location the new turbines will be placed. Finally, repowering offers a great way to rapidly increase renewable energy penetration through the reuse of both physical and non-physical assets. We've already spoken about the avoidance of long-term wind measurement studies, but another shortcut we can take with repowering is the use of existing grid connections. According to a 2024 study, it takes on average 4 years for projects in the US to get grid connection approval, a hurdle that repowering projects can largely avoid. Additionally, there's a good chance that repowering projects can make use of existing energy production licenses and land use arrangements, further reducing lead times. And since local communities near aging sites are likely already used to the presence of wind farms, there's a smaller chance of public opposition, something that frequently derails greenfield projects.
I never really understood people that have the major opposition to a wind farm. I mean, yeah, you have a spinning thing over there. It's not the most unsightly thing. If given the choice of a spinning windmill and, you know, a plume of smoke from a coal or a gas plant, I'd probably pick the windmill. I think everyone else would, you know, pretty much agree with me. Because at least, you know, if I look at that, I'm like, that's clean energy.
Okay, so we've ascertained that repowering
and solar fields just take too much land.
But how does it actually work? When a wind farm comes to the end of its life, you have several options. First, you could try to keep the turbine going for another 5 to 10 years through maintenance and part replacement, while conducting technical assessments to make sure that it's still structurally safe. The other extreme is decommissioning, removing all infrastructure from the site entirely. Repowering sort of sits in the middle of these two and comes in 2 forms. Partial repowering, where individual components like nacelles and blades are upgraded, or full repowering, where the existing equipment is entirely replaced with complete new turbines. Typically, the overall number of turbines reduces, since new machines have far higher rated powers than the ones they're replacing. As we said, the grid connection itself can also often be reused. That being said, any increase in installed capacity must be evaluated to confirm that the existing connection, and in fact the wider grid infrastructure, can absorb that additional power. And so there is a chance that reinforcements might have to be made. When it comes to repowering, there's also the question of when is the best time to do it. And often this boils down to an economic calculation. Whilst a turbine may have a functional lifespan of 20 to 25 years, the economic lifespan might be much shorter. As a turbine gets older, it likely has higher operational costs from maintenance requirements, whilst its power output also decreases from mechanical wear. And so operators considering repowering weigh up the lost production from the early retirement of turbines against the increased output that would be offered by new state-of-the-art technology. According to a 2020 study in Nature Energy, turbines in repowering projects are dismantled on average 5.8 years before those in non-repowering projects.
That makes sense.
Since this channel focuses on circular economy, I thought this was a particularly interesting observation. I mean, ideally we'd want to keep materials and machinery in use for as long as possible. And so
Well, I mean, it's the same thing as, with computers. At a certain point, it's the economics. Computer may not necessarily be bad before you replace it, but you do need to get better performance, so you may replace it before its lifespan is actually effectively ended. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's an economical decision.
it becomes a trade-off between increased efficiency and performance gains versus reduced machinery lifespans. Perhaps the best recent case study of repowering done well is that of the Muel wind farm, which I mentioned in the introduction. The site previously housed 27 600 kilowatt turbines with a combined capacity of 16.2 megawatts, which were disconnected in April 2025 after 27 years of service. The old fleet was replaced by just 3 modern turbines, increasing the total installed capacity slightly to 19.97 megawatts. The effects on the overall energy produced, though, have been huge. The project has more than doubled energy production, increasing the number of homes the site can supply from 9,400 to 21,000.
Damn!
And this was achieved using the same existing grid connection.
And since you could physically support more if they upgraded the infrastructure, you could reasonably say they could fit they went from, they said 27 to 3? That's they could go by 9 times as much. Wow. You could produce a shit ton of electricity then, in the same physical footprint, if I'm not mistaken.
What's particularly impressive is how that small 3.8 megawatt capacity increase has led to such a vast improvement in energy output. And what this comes down to is something called the capacity factor, the ratio of the actual energy produced over a period of time to the theoretical maximum output over that period, were the turbine operating at its rated power for that whole duration. Whilst the rated or maximum power of the repowered sites has only marginally increased, the real gains have come from the fact that it generates these high amounts of power for more of the time. This is due to various factors aside from straight up efficiency gains, like the fact that the new turbines are taller and are therefore able to access the stronger and steadier wind speeds at higher altitudes.
Interesting.
Since these newer turbines have more rotor area, or basically bigger blades, for their rated power, this factor allows them to begin operating and operate more effectively at lower wind speeds, increasing the total electricity generated throughout the year. This also means they produce a more stable and predictable generation profile, which reduces the variability that the grid must manage. And this makes the electricity produced more valuable to the overall power system than the intermittent output of the older machines. Newer wind turbines, of course, also come with modern features, like low voltage ride-through technology, which helps maintain grid stability by preventing many turbines from disconnecting simultaneously during voltage dips. So new turbines are installed, but there's also the question of what happens to the removed machinery. In the case of the Muel wind farm, 99.8% of the materials from the original wind farm were either recovered or recycled. Approximately 1,350 of the old components were refurbished by the company Renewable for reuse in RWE, the operator's broader wind fleet. The project also recovered 1,825 metric tons of ferrous material, and all 81 decommissioned blades were recycled to recover fiberglass and resins for reuse in other industrial sectors.
So it's really not really gone to waste. It's actually really interesting. It's pretty much renewable in the best way, that not only is it generating energy that is sustainable, but the components itself are being reused, refurbished. That's great. That's definitely environmentally friendly in ways that I didn't even consider, long past its service life.
But could we take this a step further? A 2024 study titled Designed for Repowering proposes a framework where repowering is considered in turbine design from the outset. This includes, for example, over-engineering towers and foundations from the start, enabling them to be fitted with larger, more powerful turbines in future repowering cycles. The study also proposes fitting turbines with complex sensor networks, enabling far more accurate monitoring of structural health. This, combined with other tools like digital twins, would facilitate better informed decisions about when components truly need to be replaced, and determining if aged infrastructure could safely support larger, more powerful components. This data could also be fed into predictive maintenance models, allowing maintenance to occur before rather than after defects occur, preventing downtime. Whilst these considerations would make repowering projects more profitable and more circular in the future, there are also more immediate concerns that need to be solved. For a start, existing subsidies and laws need to be amended to account for the nuances of repowering when compared to straight-up new developments. Another concern is that repowering may not always be possible, because land use and spacing rules have become stricter, for example, since the wind farm was originally built. In established markets like Germany, a 2021 paper indicated that nearly half of all current operating turbines were located in areas now designated as restricted, making repowering legally unfeasible at those sites.
That's bullshit.
Finally, it's important that clear legislative frameworks are introduced around the production of more easily recyclable wind turbine components and promoting responsible end-of-life behaviours like secondary market reuse of components and the recycling of composite materials. If you like this video, you might like some of my others, like this one about the logistics of building a wind farm. As always, I'm Luke, and this was The Upshift.
That was interesting. Let's see. Flywheels can solve clean energy's biggest problem. That's a flywheel. It's pretty fly for a wheel.
This is a mechanical energy storage system, a flywheel, a spinning mass inside this cylinder right here. Turns out in our move to wind and solar, we lost something critical, inertia in the grid. Coal, gas.
Is this dubbed? Is this auto-dubbed? It feels like it. Anyway.
Hydroelectric turbines, enormous rotating masses, some weighing hundreds of tons. Solar panels and wind turbines don't produce power this way. This could help solve that, but it gets even cooler because this model right here has a superconducting crystal bearing, which means that over the course of an hour, only 0.1% of the energy inside here is lost. So
wait, what?
To the Netherlands to meet with a
0.1% of the energy. That's ridiculous.
Company called Quintech, because this story has it all, from Boeing patents from space systems all the way to ultimately their design.
No, it's his microphone. He's not dubbed.
But we'll talk about the system, the flywheel, all the engineering, and get to the bottom of why this could be a game changer for the future of sustainable energy. I'm Ricky. This is Cuba Da Vinci.
This video is brought to you by Incogni.
Spain, April 28th, 2025. It was a normal day. Solar was generating roughly 60% of the country's electricity.
Right.
Then a small electrical oscillation at a photovoltaic plant cascaded into catastrophe. 15 gigawatts of generation gone in just 5 seconds. And tens of millions of people across Spain and Portugal plunged into darkness for nearly 10 hours. The cause wasn't that solar failed. Solar was working perfectly.
Yeah, we talked about this, and that was when people were relying on ham radio and Meshtastic to be able to keep in comms.
The problem was that the grid had no shock absorbers left, no heavy spinning metal to dampen the oscillation before it spiraled out of control. The UK learned this lesson the hard way too, after their own blackout in 2019. Their response? They invested £328 million into flywheels and synchronous compensator projects. 11 are now operational across Britain. One facility in Liverpool, Statkraft's Greener Grid Park, has two 40-ton flywheels that provide roughly 1% of the entire grid inertia for England, Scotland, and Wales from just 2 machines. So flywheels aren't theoretical, they're already saving grids. But one of the most fascinating flywheel stories I've ever come across is the one happening here at Quintech.
I used to live and work in San Francisco, and one of the things I was working on was a small vertical axis wind turbine. I was able to bring that together in a partnership with the Boeing company.
Oh, really?
And all these great scientists that would then basically review the design, the original IP, and then see how they could adapt it. And then the last stop we went through was the radar expert. And he's like, okay, this we cannot do, because the radar profile of these small wind turbines was so profound that any hostile actor would just have to go on a very simple rudimentary radar, and you could pinpoint exactly where the American camp would be. I was walking away from that meeting over the parking lot to catch a plane back to San Francisco, and somebody ran after me and tipped me on the shoulders and said, "Hey, are you Paul Hosbeek?" I say, "Yes, I am." "Well, do you still have time?"
Boeing invited Paul into a secret lab.
Star Wars.
In the 1980s, President Reagan launched the Strategic Defense Initiative, nicknamed Star Wars. The idea was ambitious and a little insane. Put lasers in space that could shoot down incoming nuclear missiles. The problem was power. Lasers need enormous amounts of energy, and they need it instantly. Boeing's Phantom Works division had the answer: flywheels. Spin a composite rotor to incredible speeds, store energy as kinetic motion, then dump it all at once to power the laser. But the breakthrough wasn't the wheel itself, it's how they made them float. Boeing used a material called YBCO. That stands for yttrium barium copper oxide. And when you cool it down to about 60 to 80 Kelvin, which is liquid nitrogen temperatures, it does something remarkable. It becomes a superconductor, and it exhibits a property called flux pinning. So if you place a magnet above it, the magnet doesn't just float.
That's
it locks
literally
its position
cool
in
tech.
Two-dimensional space. When you use this as a bearing for a flywheel rotor, the result is extraordinary. No contact between the rotor and anything else, no friction, no wear, no maintenance. You could store energy for hours, not minutes. Boeing had built a nearly frictionless spinning battery, powered by frozen crystals. But when the Strategic Defense Initiative was canceled, the government funding dried up.
Boeing asked me if I was going to be interested to take over that IP. About a year and a half later, we got the contracts. We got a worldwide exclusive license for 200 patents, and that was the start of Quintet.
This is the kind of amazing engineering that keeps me up at night. And something else that keeps me up at night is protecting my personal information online, and why I'm a huge fan of our sponsor this week, Incogni. Information, your home address, phone numbers, even your relatives' details is being collected and sold online.
Okay, we know about data brokers and all that, so we'll just skip ahead. Look, we're on the cybersecurity channel. We know about Incogni, we know about all those companies.
Flywheel. And the first thing that strikes you is how compact it is. It fits in a standard 10-foot shipping container. It weighs around 6 tons, and it can deliver 300 kilowatts of power. That might not sound like...
Hold up. They're missing a bolt. They're missing a bolt right here. I'm sorry, I noticed these things.
Around 6 tons.
See? It's missing a bolt.
Of power. That might not sound like a lot until you realize the thing can dump its entire energy reserve in seconds and recharge just as quickly. Over more than 350,000 times without degradation like a traditional battery. The physics of why this works are actually pretty elegant.
So you probably know a pottery wheel. Pottery wheel, you basically turn with your feet, and you're not gonna stop it with your hands because you know it's gonna hurt. There's energy in there. Flywheel. So let's suppose you put this in magnetic bearings, so it levitates like a maglev train in Japan or something like that. That means there's no friction here, which means that any energy in there, it will keep turning, but it still has drag, you know, like a car, for instance. Then you put a vessel around it and you take the air out, so it's in vacuum. So basically, once it spins, it stays spinning forever. Now the big problem is now your feet can't reach it anymore. So how the hell you're gonna drive it? You stick on some magnets on the shaft. Here you put some coils, which means then you made an electromotor or motor generator.
The energy stored in a flywheel is defined by a simple equation. 1/2 times the moment of inertia times the angular velocity squared. You see that squared? That is the cheat code. If you double mass, you double energy. But if you double speed, you get 4 times the energy in the same
Damn.
That's why Quintet doesn't use heavy steel rotors like the old gyrobus in the 1950s. They use carbon fiber. It's lighter, but it has immense tensile strength. Their rotor spins at speeds where the rim is moving at Mach 3, nearly 1,000 meters per second. And if you're wondering why it doesn't just burn up, it's because the whole thing operates in a vacuum. Now, obviously, there's a lot to love about mechanical flywheels. As a mechanical engineer, I just find them fascinating in a way that chemical batteries just aren't. But I think one thing we can all agree on is that superconducting crystal bearings are just super cool. That's why I wanted to come here and ask him about it. And after meeting with the team, what I learned is not what I was expecting.
Obviously, the uniqueness of that Boeing flywheel was it was ultra efficient, right? So it had standby losses inside of the can of less than 0.1% per hour.
Which is crazy for
Which is crazy.
Quintech spent years working on the superconducting bearing system, and they actually got it to work. They proved the physics, they published papers. They had a flywheel that floated on frozen crystals with almost zero friction. And then they completely got rid of it altogether.
We ended up
what? Why?
building one. We got it exactly as Boeing had it designed, with the superconductive bearing, with the carbon fiber rotors. And in that process, we also found out that this ultra high-tech aerospace engineering foundation that we took over from Boeing was not necessarily a good fit with these earthy applications like construction cranes or port cranes or anything else. So we ended up really, we hacked the Boeing IP to turn it into something that is more reliable, but mainly also much cheaper.
Those YBCO crystals are manufactured in specialized laboratories. They're expensive. And to keep them superconducting, you got to maintain cryogenic temperatures of 60 to 80 Kelvin inside every shipping container that you deploy. And when they added it all up, they came to a startling realization that this was the most elegant possible solution to a problem, but that it wasn't the right solution. So they had to make a hard call. They switched to active electromagnetic bearings.
The trade-off would be you can, instead of having the superconducting crystal bearing, which gives you the 0.1% energy loss per hour, which is insane. But if I'm operating a crane 5 times an hour, that's never going to be a problem, right?
Never a problem.
So you trade that potentially for cost.
Exactly.
And it sounds like power also. That's interesting.
Cost, power, output, footprint, and all these things that are important for our end market, for our end users, is what we incorporated into this redesign. And this is now the Quintech, the new kid on the block.
Do they have more friction? Yeah, slightly. Do the flywheels lose energy a bit faster? Yes, they will. But the electromagnetic bearings are dramatically cheaper, dramatically simpler, and they're commercially off-the-shelf available. And the product went from a lab demonstration to something actually sitting on a dock in Rotterdam, actually saving companies money and actually doing real work. This was around the point where on this trip I realized that maybe we need to think about sustainable energy technology a little bit differently. Because Quintech's story isn't unique. Take SunPower. They make the most efficient residential solar panels in the world. They charge $3 to $4 per watt installed. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturers were building panels 22 to 24% efficient, almost as good, for less than $1 per watt. In August 2024, SunPower filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Right, because I'd buy the Chinese panels.
Cutting edge as their technology was, it just didn't meet the market expectations and didn't deliver on price. Quintech lived this. They had the objective superior bearing technology, superconductors that defy physics, and they chose to walk away from it because the slightly worse solution was 10 times more deployable. But does it actually work in the real world?
What this thing is strong at is delivering power peaks over and over and over because it doesn't degrade over time. It has hundreds of thousands of cycles in it. So we've been looking at what kind of applications do we see that has this type of behavior. And we figured out that cranes in particular, on a construction site, tower cranes or in port cranes, they have these very high power peaks.
Think about what a port crane does. It sits idle. Then a container ship arrives and suddenly it needs hundreds of kilowatts, sometimes megawatts of power to hoist a 30-ton container. It does this for a few seconds. Then it goes idle again. Then another lift. All day long, massive, violent spikes that are absolutely brutal for the grid.
Constructions can't get their grid connected.
Thank you for the subscription there, Darko.
Their power demand is going through the roof. And they have to make do with the infrastructure that's there.
Kick doesn't really have the alerts yet.
Spend a lot of money on upgrading it. And what we do with the Flywheel, we install a container there, we can peak shave multiple cranes, and we bring down the power demand by 60 to 80%. Instead of needing 5 megawatts, of power, maybe you now only need 1 megawatt. When it's going down also, that's the interesting thing. Especially port cranes, tower cranes don't have that much, because the tower crane only lift up heavy load to the top and then empty below. But a crane goes heavy up, heavy down. When it goes down, it generates energy. You're sending energy back to the grid. The fun thing about this one is that you can capture that energy actually and reuse it on the next hoist.
At the Steinweg terminal at the port of Moerdijk in 2025, they did 70% peak power reduction. The system responded in fractions of a second. It also compensated for reactive power and improved voltage stability across the terminal.
We have traction not only here in the Netherlands, but we are working on projects in Denmark, in Spain.
Wow,
We
70%,
have plans lined
that's
up in Italy. We're also
not
gonna be
something to
deploying
shy
systems
at.
in the United States pretty soon. I just came back from Kiev, Ukraine, where we have a contract to deploy a total of 6 of these Flywheel systems to Port of Odessa, to help keep that port operational even when the central grid is under attack and is dysfunctioning.
Quintech pairs their flywheels with sodium-ion batteries in their Zeus hybrid container system. This flywheel handles the violent power spikes. The battery handles the sustained load. Each technology does what it does best. And Quintech isn't alone in this space. Taurus, based in Utah, just raised $200 million and has deployed over 230 flywheel systems for airports, ski resorts, and data centers. Amber Kinetics, a UC Berkeley spinoff, Go Bears, has partnered with Kawasaki Heavy Industries to pair their 4-hour flywheels with virtual synchronous generator technology software. At this point, it's time for a bit of a reality check, right? When we talk about these technologies, it's never one or the other. It's not that flywheels are going to replace batteries or anything like that. It's quite the opposite. Remember that flywheels are sprinters, not marathoners. High power, low energy, niche applications built for specific purposes. I think the port crane is the best example I've heard of so far. But that niche is growing fast. Every coal plant we're retiring removes shock absorbers from our grids. Every data center we build adds another power-hungry consumer that demands instant, reliable energy. Every port we electrify needs burst power that batteries alone probably can't deliver. The most important thing I've learned visiting Quintech wasn't about flywheels per se, although I did learn a lot. It's about the next chapter of clean energy. As an engineer, I love a good story, the technical challenges and the details that make something interesting. Superconducting crystal bearings, I mean, come on, that just sounds amazing. But what I've been learning, the more I do these videos and cover more and more companies doing this, is ultimately you got to win out on the economics. The business side has to win out too.
Yeah, it always comes out to the
Cheap enough.
economics.
Manufacturing has to come into play, supply chains, and all the rest. It reminds me of this amazing quote from Darwin. It's not the strongest of species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change. And that tells this story perfectly, because this captures how this idea started from a Boeing patent, from space systems, to ultimately what customers actually need for the grid. I love
sodium batteries or flywheels, both.
Things. As a mechanical engineer, I have a special place in my heart. But what do you think? How big of a role will flywheel energy storage have to the future of more stable grids? Sound off in the comments below. And until next week, check out this video that we think you'll also like. I'm Ricky Da Vinci. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, I never thought about, surge demands like that. But that's interesting. Okay, so hold on. What's this? Vampire.
They're using AI to slip adverts into shows that you're already watching and you wouldn't even know. The actors in the show will do the adverts unknowingly. Check this out. Look, this is Suits. Normal show, everything's working as normal. He's coming out to jump in the car, and then suddenly an ad break hits. AI generates the advert, different
What
for
the
everyone.
fuck?
This one's a Coca-Cola advert, takes you over to Coca-Cola, and then it just seamlessly goes on with the show. The actors themselves in the shows are going to be the people presenting the products that the advertisers want. Every person gets a different advert depending on their own selected advertising. Old shows like Friends, an ad break shows up. Suddenly, Joey reaches down and grabs a Beats by Dre headphones. And you can go over and click on it.
I do not like this. I do not like this. Like, what, you're gonna have, like, Beats by Dre show up in a 90s show when Dre was still in NWA?
seamlessly adding these products in and even having the actors showcase them, and they don't need to bring the actors in. It's just going to be seamless.
Yeah, that's wrong. That is wrong. Okay, so let's see. What's this article that HBX shared? Five Eyes allies warn hackers are actively exploiting Cisco SD-WAN flaws. Yep. Another day, another Cisco exploit being taken advantage of. So, software-defined WAN. Hooray. CV 2026 and an old one, 2022, which have been linked to real-world exploitation. We're going to inject ads into our brains during REM sleep. Yeah, like Futurama. Futurama's telling the truth about what's gonna happen. We're gonna sleep, and then we're gonna get ads injected into our sleep. So, yep, this is happening now, so update your shields. The rogue device appears as a new but temporary actor-controlled SD-WAN component that can conduct trusted actions within the management and control plane. Fun! CBP tapped into the online advertising ecosystem to track people's online movements. Oh, yay! Customs and Border Patrol. They're using ads to track you. Yet another reason to install ad blockers. Hooray! And then what's this? The end of Steam. Not the gaming platform.
I, like a lot of you, saw articles on my timeline a few weeks ago claiming that China has just killed the steam engine. And if you saw my video last month about small modular reactors, which honestly could have been titled a video essay on why steam engines are kind of disappointing, you will understand why this headline grabbed my attention. But what is it that has everyone so convinced that this might be putting the nail in the coffin of the 140-year-old workhorse of industrial civilization for good? And what even is a supercritical CO2 turbine? More importantly, is this the moment we finally move beyond Victorian thermodynamics? Or are we just renaming it? Let's dive in.
Turbines to speed. Roger, ready to move out.
In December, the China National Nuclear Corporation announced that it just switched on what it's calling the first commercial grid-connected supercritical CO2 power unit, not attached to a fancy nuclear plant, but bolted onto a waste heat system in a steelworks in Jiuzhou. Not the flashy entrance into the world that maybe this new technology deserves or wanted. It is a pair of 15 megawatt waste heat turbines called Chaitin 1. And honestly, while the technical details are a little sparse, the numbers that are being thrown around are pretty impressive. According to the announcement, swapping out the existing steam turbine for this new supercritical CO2 system boosted energy generation efficiency by over 85%, while delivering more than 50% more net power from the same heat source. On top of that, they're claiming that the whole setup is 50% smaller overall, and the bottom line is that the plant will now be able to generate more than 70 million kilowatt hours of electricity per year, which they are saying translates to about $4.3 million US in extra revenue into the pocket of the steelworks. So what is so special about these supercritical CO2 turbines that means that this announcement is getting so much attention? To understand that, we first need to look at what is a supercritical fluid.
It's supercritical. A study of pessimistic fluids.
Since the early 1800s, when Baron Charles Quenard de la Tour observed that if you increase the temperature and pressure of a system, the distinction between a liquid and a gas starts to disappear. I usually explain this as a supercritical fluid is a gas, meaning the molecules are so hot, the intermolecular forces that usually hold a liquid together can no longer lock the system into a stable condensed phase, but that the density of this gas, the number of molecules in any given volume, is so high that it is still basically the same density as a liquid. The question that you might have is, why CO2? Why can't you do this with just something like water? When people hear water, they think of something harmless, but water is one of the most chemically active fluids used in large-scale engineering systems. At room temperature, it readily dissolves ions and promotes electrochemical reactions, and it supports corrosion processes in most structural metals. Under power plant conditions, that chemistry becomes far more aggressive. When supercritical, water's dielectric constant drops from around 80 at ambient conditions to below 10 near the critical point. That change means it no longer behaves like a strongly polar solvent, meaning the metal oxides that are usually stable and resist corrosion in subcritical water start suddenly to dissolve and corrode when water is at supercritical conditions. By comparison, supercritical CO2 is chemically far more stable. It doesn't support the same electrochemical corrosion mechanisms because it lacks the ionic conductivity of water. But maybe the deeper advantage comes from something much more fundamental. The intermolecular forces between CO2 molecules are just really weak. Where water has strong hydrogen bonds, CO2 has kind of feeble van der Waals forces. For water, that means the critical point is at 374 degrees Celsius and 22 megapascals, reasonably extreme conditions. For CO2 though, this critical point is down at just 31 degrees C and 7 megapascals. In practical terms, that means that just accessing this supercritical state in CO2 is dramatically easier, and you don't need extreme temperatures or pressures. And once you do cross that critical point, CO2 becomes dense like a liquid, but flows like a gas. And that becomes really powerful if you try to do something like spin a turbine. In a turbine, power is generated by moving mass past a series of turbine blades. The more mass flow that you can drive through per second, the more momentum that you can extract and the more electrical power that you can generate. And we'll get to why that is important, but first I have to thank today's sponsor, Odoo. As someone involved in running several different companies, I sometimes feel like I am operating at a supercritical pressure. Odoo helps keep everything in one stable phase. Odoo is an all-in-one business management platform with invoicing, accounting, CRM, project management, inventory, and even website creation all in one place. One of the applications I find most useful is Odoo's eSign, mainly because it minimizes the time that I have to spend negotiating with a printer. With Odoo eSign, you can customize each document in just a few clicks and add one or multiple signers and easily drag and drop fields like name, date, email, or signature anywhere in the document. You can also make fields mandatory or optional and determine the signing order. You can then send documents instantly, set automatic reminders to avoid delays, and sign directly on any device, phone, tablet, or computer. Signers can create their own signature by drawing it, handwriting it, or uploading a scanned copy. And you can track everything in real time to receive notifications about the status of the document, and each signer gets a unique, traceable link. Odoo's eSign complies with all electronic signature standards in over 100 countries. I like endorsing Odoo because it is genuinely used by a bunch of my portfolio companies, and if that sounds like something that would make your life slightly easier and less high pressure, you can sign up using my link in the description down below, and your first Odoo app is free for life, including unlimited hosting and support. And if you want to expand, you can add more apps with an affordable plan. Thank you, Odoo, for supporting the channel. Now back to the video. While the exact geometry of the Chaitin 1 isn't public, all supercritical CO2 turbines follow the same basic closed Brayton architecture. You begin with CO2 at roughly 30 degrees Celsius, just below its 31 degree critical point, where it's already dense, typically around 600 to 800 kilograms per cubic meter. Here it enters the compressor and is pressurized to around 20 megapascals, or around 200 atmospheres. Because CO2 near the critical point is so dense, its specific volume is incredibly low. That's important because compressor work scales with specific volume. So compressing supercritical CO2 requires dramatically less energy than compressing conventional gas. In practical terms, compressor work in a supercritical CO2 cycle can be less than a third of what the equivalent open Brayton gas turbine would require. That high pressure fluid is then passed through a recuperator, where it absorbs heat from the turbine exhaust. The exhaust is still hot, typically 350 to 500 degrees Celsius. So instead of dumping that heat into the environment, the system recycles it internally. This is much harder to do in steam plants because there the low pressure exhaust is often only 40 to 60 degrees Celsius and is partially condensed. So there is far less usable high grade heat available for this recovery step. After recuperation, the CO2 may already be 300 degrees Celsius, process even before it reaches the primary heat source. In this main heater, whether it's nuclear, gas, coal, or concentrated solar, it raises the supercritical CO2 to over 700 degrees Celsius before injecting it into the turbine. Within the turbine, it undergoes rapid expansion through the turbine system. As it expands from roughly 20 megapascal down to perhaps 10 megapascal, enthalpy is converted into shaft work. Here, the dense exhaust gas transfers its momentum into a series of compact turbine blades spinning at tens of thousands of revolutions per minute, which drive a generator to produce electricity. Because CO2 is far denser than steam in most of the cycle, often by 1 to 3 orders of magnitude depending on the state point, the volumetric flow rate required for the same power output is dramatically lower. This allows that turbo machinery to be up to 10 times smaller than the equivalent steam system. Here what's important is that centrifugal stress scales directly with the radius of the blade. This means that these machines can spin significantly faster without exceeding their material limits. The overall result is that you produce a power block that is smaller, potentially cheaper per megawatt, and capable of thermal efficiencies approaching 45 to 50%. That makes them, in theory, significantly more competitive by comparison to things like steam plants, which run according to the Rankine cycle and typically cap out around 35% efficiency. This means that on paper, pound for pound, supercritical CO2 outperforms steam across size, density, and thermodynamic efficiency, which naturally raises the question, if it is smaller, denser, and more efficient, why isn't it everywhere?
This planet has an incredibly dense molecular structure.
Building a system capable of maintaining temperatures of 700 degrees Celsius and operating at pressures of 20 megapascal, it turns out isn't that gentle on the engineering. The first barrier that we encounter is materials. Above 550 degrees Celsius, conventional steels under sustained load begin to deform through a process called creep. At the same time, oxygen diffuses into the metal surfaces and forms oxide scales that can crack or spool away under thermal cycling. Steam turbines face the same problems too, which is why modern high-temperature power plants typically rely on nickel-based superalloys with names like Inconel 718 or Haynes 230. These alloys are carefully engineered at the microscopic level using elements such as chromium, aluminium, and molybdenum to form protective oxide layers around the materials that allows them to survive at temperatures where ordinary steels would simply start to fail. But using supercritical CO2 adds a different degradation mechanism. Between roughly 500 and 700 degrees C, iron and nickel-based alloys can absorb carbon from high-pressure CO2. That carbon diffuses along the grain boundaries and forms brittle carbides in a process known as carburization. Over time, that can reduce the ductility of a material and can initiate cracking.
This is a lot of chemistry that I've forgotten from high school.
Starting to get to the point where we have sufficiently well-designed superalloys that can start to slow this process, but we simply don't have the multi-decade data on how well these materials behave after 20 or 30 years in dense CO2 environments. You can also imagine that these alloys aren't that trivial to work with. The very microstructure that prevents things like creep makes them difficult to machine, and they can cost tens of times more per kilogram than structural steel before you even start taking into account things like specialized castings, heat treatments, or the fabrication process. The second major problem is the recuperator. The efficiency and advantage of the entire supercritical CO2 cycle depends on how efficiently you recycle heat from the turbine exhaust back into the compressed inlet stream. Without incredibly high recuperation effectiveness, typically above 90%, the efficiency benefit largely disappears. And that puts you in a difficult design constraint where you need to transfer enormous thermal loads across incredibly thin walls while maintaining pressures approaching 20 megapascal. Most of the designs that we're seeing at the moment achieve this using diffusion bonded printed circuit heat exchangers, stacks of chemically etched metal plates that are fused together into a monolithic block containing thousands of tiny microchannels that run through them. They become incredibly compact, strong, and highly efficient, but they also are incredibly difficult to inspect, basically impossible to disassemble, and incredibly expensive to manufacture. And if microcracks start to develop inside the bonded core that's operating at 200 atmospheres and it starts to fail, everyone has a bad time. The third major
that would be a pain in the ass, I can see.
As a positive is the turbo machinery. Because CO2 is dense, the turbines can be much smaller than steam's equivalent. But smaller rotors must spin faster to achieve the same tip speeds, typically tens of thousands of revolutions per minute, and actually that can be a major drawback. At these levels of RPM, even tiny friction forces generate significant amounts of heat, and that means that you can't do things like use conventional bearings because the speed and heat would cause the lubricant to break down, leading to potentially catastrophic failure. In some of the most recent academic test rigs and demonstrators that I've seen back in 2022 in places like Germany, teams have been switching to things like magnetic bearings that support the rotating shaft without physical contact. No mechanical contact means in theory these things have very long shelf life, but that comes at
We've talked about magnetic bearings in quite a few different other projects. They're really interesting concepts. But yeah.
The expense of complexity, requiring constant power, which means you need backup bearings in case you ever get a power failure, and that all means that you simply have much higher capital costs. There are a few other demonstrators out there that I've seen, like hydrostatic or hydrodynamic bearings. They float on a cushion of fluid, and these have been proven in steam and gas turbines in the past using the CO2 itself as the working fluid. But that also means that your bearings need to operate and support 200 atmospheres of pressure. And again, these systems are in development and in early works, particularly in places like Korea, but they're not yet at a point where we're seeing them mass rolled out. All these teething problems broadly bring us back to what is the Chaitin 1, and how excited should we actually be? If the Chaitin 1 is genuinely running at high temperature and pressure with stable recuperation and reliable turbo machinery, then it represents something more important than incremental efficiency or extra revenue for the steel plant. It signals that manufacturing tolerances, material science, and system integration challenges might all finally be coming to a point where they're starting to converge, at least sufficient to start running them in somewhat commercial test settings. That is interesting, but the test setting that they have chosen to run it in also tells us a lot. This isn't bolted on to a big, flashy, next-gen nuclear reactor. It is being deployed on something much more ordinary.
Well, I think that a lot of people keep forgetting. They keep looking at China like, oh, China just makes cheap shit, and keep forgetting there's over 1 billion people there, and America's education has been falling so far behind. So it doesn't surprise me that China is, like, starting to supersede American technology. We took advantage of our position for far too long.
And arguably less exciting, that is just waste heat. If supercritical CO2 turbines were sufficiently mature, you would be expecting to see these things integrated directly into advanced nuclear designs, or maybe just as primary energy generation mechanisms in coal and other existing plants, because that's where the efficiency gains would actually matter most. But nuclear projects are already pretty high risk and highly regulated, and in new nuclear or in existing power plants, you don't add a relatively unproven turbomachinery platform into the mix unless you're pretty confident that it will behave predictably over at least a 10 to 20 year time horizon. So to me, the Chaitin 1 being tested in these kind of nice to have settings tells us behind the scenes where the technology and confidence and market readiness actually are. Enough to start to win early feasibility and pilot type projects, but not yet at the point where this energy revolution is on the cusp like it's kind of been packaged as. That is, at least until we have the depth of data that this first sort of pilot might provide us. Then maybe, sure, everything does start to change. What I do find still slightly amusing is that what we're talking about when we're saying leaving the steam age behind, well, the steam engines and the Rankine cycle that underpins it dates back to 1859. And the Brayton cycle that the supercritical turbines rely on, we first formulated in about 1872. So after 150 years of progress, we've upgraded by about 13 years. I guess every little helps. If you enjoyed this video and want to support my team making this sort of content, we would love it if you joined us over on Patreon or as a channel member, or if you're interested in the work that I do outside of YouTube, join our newsletter down below. Thank you, as always, for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting video. Yeah. Gave me a lot to think about. But I think I'm getting a little bit tired, guys. So I think I'm gonna call it just a little bit early. Normally get off around 10, but yeah, so thank you all for joining me. Make sure, if you haven't already, to follow me on all of my socials. The links are in the bio for everything. What video was that? It's Dr. Ben Miles. It's happening. China launches world's first superficial CO2 turbine. But yeah, follow me on all of my socials. Make sure to join the Discord and the Matrix server. The links are in the bio for everything if you don't see them in the chat. And then I'll try to maybe stream tomorrow or maybe Friday. But the next stream for sure is Sunday. I got a few more videos that I'm going to try to be releasing on YouTube. YouTube is where I primarily release videos these days, and then TikTok gets the sloppy second clips afterwards. But yeah, so stick around for the raid if you're over on Twitch. I love all of you. Stay safe, and as always, happy hacking, and I will see you around.